The Billionaire twins kept crying until the maid's toddler shocking revelation changed everything. Baby hurt. Baby hurt, dear. 3 words, spoken by a tiny 3-year-old girl with bare feet and a juice-stained shirt. And just like that, a room full of the world's most expensive doctors went completely silent. Nobody moved, because every single expert in that room had missed exactly what that little child was pointing at. The Whitmore estate looked like heaven from the outside. 40 acres, iron gates, hedges taller than most men, a driveway so long it had its own zip code, or at least it felt that way when you were driving toward a house lit up at 3 in the morning while the rest of the world was sleeping peacefully. From the outside, pure perfection. From the inside, pure chaos. Why are they still crying? Nathaniel Whitmore's voice tore through the hallway like a thunderclap. He was 34 years old, worth $4.2 billion on a slow day, named Forbes' most influential under 35 2 years in a row. And right now, he was standing in a nursery doorway in a wrinkled dress shirt, no tie, hair a complete disaster, looking like a man who hadn't slept since the Obama administration. His twins, Amelia and Ethan, 9 months old, were screaming, not fussing, not whimpering, not the cute little baby noises that made people coo and reach for their phones to record. Screaming, the real kind, the kind that goes straight into a parent's spine and stays there. This was day 11. 11 days of nonstop crying. Mr. Whitmore, Dr. Patricia Howe, the lead pediatric specialist he'd flown in from Boston on a private jet, placed a careful hand on his arm. He looked at that hand like it had just landed from outer space. "Don't," he said quietly. "Sir, I understand your frustration, but medically speaking, the twins show no signs of." "No signs," he repeated slowly. "No signs. Dr. Howe, my children have been crying for 11 days straight. They haven't slept more than 40 minutes at a time. They won't eat. They won't be comforted. They arch their backs like something is hurting them. And you, a woman with 3 medical degrees and a wall full of awards, are standing in my home telling me there are no signs." The doctor opened her mouth, then closed it. "I've had 4 different specialists in this room," Nathaniel continued, his voice dropping dangerously low, which was somehow scarier than the shouting. "I've had 2 pediatric neurologists, 1 GI specialist, and a sleep consultant who charged me $12,000 for a report that told me to put them on a schedule. 3 nannies have quit. 2 nurses told me to let them cry it out. My housekeeper, God bless her, has been sleeping on a cot in the hallway because she refuses to leave." He walked to Amelia's crib and lifted her, careful, practiced, gentle, pressing her small, crying body against his chest. She screamed louder. He didn't flinch. He just kept rocking. "Something is wrong with my children," he said, almost to himself now. "Something is wrong. And I am going to find out what it is even if I have to burn this whole world down to do it." The nursery was, objectively, a masterpiece. Hand-painted woodland murals, custom cribs from a workshop in Copenhagen, a sound machine with 27 lullaby settings, blackout curtains from Paris, temperature locked at exactly 68.4 degrees Fahrenheit because a specialist had told him that was optimal for infant sleep. It had everything money could buy, except answers. Josephine, the night nurse, the only one who hadn't yet suggested quitting or sedating anybody, appeared quietly at the door with 2 warm bottles. "Sir." "Fresh batch. Different formula brand, no corn syrup like you asked." "Thank you, Joe." He said it like she was the only sane person in the building. Because, honestly, she might have been. She set the bottles down and moved to Ethan's crib without being asked, checking his diaper with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times. The room held its breath. Nathaniel paced, rocking Amelia, shushing, humming something tuneless that he'd made up somewhere around day 3 when he'd run out of actual lullabies. His phone, always glued to his hand, always blowing up with billion-dollar decisions, was face down on the dresser. Had been for 4 days. He didn't care about any of that right now. He had built a company from a dorm room. He had closed deals in Tokyo at midnight and Hong Kong at dawn. He had survived a hostile takeover attempt, 2 recessions, and a lawsuit that had made the front page of the Wall Street Journal. None of that had prepared him for this. For 2 9-month-old humans who needed something from him that he could not figure out how to give them. His late wife's face flashed in his mind, as it always did in these moments. Lydia. She would have known what to do. She always knew. She had that gift, the ability to walk into a room where Nathaniel was spinning out and simply ground everything. Slow it all down. But Lydia had been gone for 7 months now. A car accident on a Tuesday morning. Ordinary Tuesday. Grocery run. Gone. And Nathaniel had been left alone with 2 infants who had entered the world 2 months early. 2 infants who had spent their first weeks in the NICU while their father sat outside the glass and learned to pray for the first time in his adult life. And now, 9 months in, those same infants were in agony, and he couldn't fix it. The wealthiest man in 3 counties. Completely powerless. "I want a new round of tests," he said, not looking up from Amelia. "Blood panels. Full GI workup. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if you have to bring the equipment here. You bring it here." Dr. Howe nodded. Quietly pulled out her phone to make calls. Outside in the hallway, something shuffled. A small sound. Different from the crying. Different from the beeping monitors and the hushed medical voices and the expensive sound machines cycling through its lullabies. A tiny knock on the open door. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, in a soft yellow pajama set with little ducks on it, holding a worn stuffed bunny by one ear, was a small girl. 3 years old. Big dark eyes blinking at the chaos around her. A tiny juice stain on her collar. Hair in 2 lopsided pigtails like someone had done them in a hurry, or maybe the day before. It was Rosa, the daughter of Maria, the housekeeper who had been sleeping on the hallway cot. The little girl who had apparently slipped out of her mother's makeshift bed and padded down the corridor, drawn by the crying, pulled by something no one could explain. Nathaniel stared at her. "Rosa, sweetheart." Josephine started forward. "You shouldn't be in here, honey. Let's get you back to—" But Rosa wasn't looking at Josephine. She wasn't looking at the doctors. Wasn't fazed by the monitors or the equipment or the tension so thick in that room you could have cut it with a blade. She was looking at the cribs. Her small forehead creased. Her head tilted, like she was listening to something, like she was figuring something out that every adult in the room had been too busy, too educated, too expert, too overwhelmed to notice. Then she walked forward. 3 years old, bare feet on cold marble, stuffed bunny swinging. She stopped at Ethan's crib, looked down at him for a long moment. Then she raised her small hand and pointed. "Baby hurt," she said softly. "Baby hurt, dear." And the room full of specialists and nurses and a billionaire on the edge of breaking, went absolutely silent. Nobody moved for a full 3 seconds, which, in a room full of medical professionals trained to respond instantly, was an eternity. It was Nathaniel who broke the silence. "What did she say?" His voice came out strange, stripped of the sharp authority that usually lived in it. Just raw. Josephine cleared her throat. "She's 3, Mr. Whitmore. She probably just—" "I heard what she said." He was already moving toward the crib, still holding Amelia against his shoulder. "Rosa, come here, sweetheart." The little girl looked up at him without fear. That was the thing about Rosa. She had grown up in this house, toddling through its marble halls while her mother polished and cleaned and quietly kept everything running. She wasn't intimidated by the size of the rooms or the weight of the name on the gate. She just looked at Nathaniel with those big steady eyes and pointed again.
"Dear," she said.
"It hurt, dear." She was pointing at Ethan's left side, just below his ribs. Nathaniel looked at Dr. Howe. Dr. Howe looked at Ethan. And something shifted in her expression, something almost imperceptible, the way a doctor's face changes when a thought occurs to them that they are not yet ready to say out loud. "Dr. Howe." Nathaniel's voice was quiet, but the warning in it was unmistakable. What is it? It's probably nothing. The child is. She is 3 years old, and she is the first person in 11 days who has pointed at something specific. He stepped closer. So, I'm going to ask you one more time.
What is it?
Dr. House set down her tablet. When we did the abdominal ultrasound on day 4, she said slowly, we were looking primarily at the GI tract. Gas, reflux, possible obstruction. The images were the positioning was difficult. They were crying during the scan, which causes muscle tension, which can… Dr. Howe. There's a possibility, she said carefully, a small possibility, that we may have missed something in the lateral view of Ethan's left side. A very small anomaly. I noted it at the time, but given his overall labs and his… You noted it. The words landed like stones. You noted an anomaly in my son's body, and you didn't tell me. Because, at the time it appeared to be. Get the portable ultrasound machine. His voice had gone completely flat.
Right now.
Tonight. You bring it to this room, and you look again. And this time, he glanced down at Rosa, who was still standing patiently by the crib with her bunny. This time you look at exactly where she's pointing. 40 minutes later, the portable ultrasound was in the nursery. The room had cleared out, just Dr. Howe, her assistant Dr. Reeves, Josephine, and Nathaniel. Rosa had been taken back to her mother, who had appeared in the hallway in a panic, mortified that her daughter had wandered. She didn't do anything wrong, Nathaniel had told Maria firmly. Please don't scold her. Please. Maria had blinked at him, surprised, maybe, by the softness in a man she'd only ever seen in board meeting mode, and nodded quietly. Now he stood against the wall with his arms crossed and watched Dr. Howe run the ultrasound wand slowly across Ethan's left side. Ethan was crying, of course. But even through the crying, something had changed in Nathaniel's chest, some small, stubborn ember of hope that a 3-year-old girl with a stuffed bunny had somehow lit. There, Dr. Reeves said suddenly. He was younger, mid-30s, the kind of doctor who still leaned forward when he looked at something instead of standing back.
He was leaning forward now.
Pull up the day 4 image, Dr. Howe said quietly. Her assistant pulled it up on the tablet beside them. They compared. The silence in the room was a different kind of silence than before. Before, it had been the silence of helplessness. This was the silence of something being found. It's grown, Dr. Reeves said. What has grown? Nathaniel was across the room in 4 steps. Dr. Howe turned to face him. And for the first time in 11 days, she didn't look like a specialist delivering careful non-answers. She looked like a doctor who had just made a mistake and knew it. Ethan has a small cyst, she said. Here, just lateral to the spleen. On day 4 it was just under 4 millimeters, well within the range we'd typically monitor rather than act on. But it appears to have grown. It's now closer to 11 millimeters, and the positioning, she exhaled, the positioning suggests it may be creating intermittent pressure, particularly when he's lying on his back. Which is how infants sleep, Nathaniel said. Yes. So, every time he lies down, he may be experiencing a dull, persistent pressure pain. Yes. The room was very quiet. And Amelia? His voice cracked slightly on her name. Her situation is different. We'd need to run more imaging, but I want to look at her hip positioning. Josephine flagged something last week she stopped herself, that I should have followed up on faster than I did. Nathaniel turned away from all of them. He stood facing the woodland mural on the nursery wall, the painted deer and the little painted fox and the oak trees that Lydia had picked out from an artist's portfolio on a Sunday afternoon, laughing because she couldn't decide between the woodland theme and a moon and stars theme, and finally said both. We'll do both in different rooms, and he pressed one hand flat against the wall and breathed.
In, out.
He was not going to fall apart right now. He was going to hold it together, because his children needed him to hold it together. What do we do? He finally said, his back still to the room. For Ethan, we need a pediatric surgeon to evaluate the cyst. Given its rate of growth, I'd recommend consulting within 24 hours. It's likely a simple procedure, minimally invasive, outpatient potentially. But it needs to happen. Call whoever you need. Tonight. It's 4 a.m., mister. I don't care if it's 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. or the middle of Christmas. You call them. You tell them what this is. You tell them I will have a plane at whatever airport they are nearest to within 2 hours. He turned around. Are we clear? Yes, sir. And Amelia? I need the radiology team back. Tomorrow morning. First light. I want to look at. Tonight. A pause. Tonight, she agreed. Nathaniel walked back to the cribs. He looked down at his son, small face red and exhausted from crying, tiny fist curled near his cheek, and something happened in his chest that he didn't have a word for yet. He reached in and very gently, very carefully, turned Ethan onto his right side. Within 40 seconds, the crying changed. It didn't stop, but it softened. The sharp, desperate quality went out of it like air from a balloon. Ethan's little eyes fluttered. Nathaniel stood there with tears running down his face and didn't bother wiping them. A 3-year-old, Josephine whispered from behind him, her voice barely audible. She knew. He nodded.
He couldn't speak.
By 6 a.m. the house felt like a different place. Not fixed, not yet, but different. The way a storm feels different once the worst of it is past, and the air is still electric, but the rain has softened to something survivable. Ethan had slept for 2 hours and 40 minutes. 2 hours and 40 minutes. The longest stretch in 11 days. He'd woken up fussy, but not screaming, not that broken, relentless scream that had been slowly dismantling his father from the inside out. Just fussy. Normal baby fussy. Nathaniel had stood outside the nursery door listening to just fussy and thought he might actually collapse with relief. The pediatric surgeon, Dr. Alan Marsh, flown in from New York Presbyterian, a man who had been deeply unimpressed at being called at 4 in the morning until Nathaniel had explained the situation and the timeline and the fact that a 3-year-old had identified what a team of specialists had missed, had arrived by 5:45 a.m., looked at the imaging, and said 7 words that Nathaniel had already memorized. We can fix this. Simple laparoscopic procedure. Outpatient. Low risk. Scheduled for 48 hours from now to allow Ethan's tiny body a window of rest first. Amelia's situation was still being unraveled. The radiology team had come in at 5 a.m. sharp as instructed and were now comparing current imaging to birth records. But Dr. Howe had already flagged what she believed was a subtle hip dysplasia issue that had been missed at the 4-month check, compounded by the way Amelia had been positioned in her crib. Fixable. Also fixable. Both of them. Fixable. Nathaniel had gone to the kitchen not to eat, just to stand somewhere that wasn't the nursery, and that's where he found Maria. She was at the counter in a worn gray cardigan, both hands wrapped around a mug of tea, staring out at the pale early morning sky like she was bracing for something. She startled when she heard him come in. Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry about Rosa. She must have gotten out when I was. Stop.
She stopped.
He pulled out the stool across from her and sat down, which was unusual enough. He rarely sat in the kitchen, rarely sat anywhere in the house that wasn't his office or the nursery these days, that she blinked at him. How old is Rosa? He asked.
3.
3.5. How long has she been coming here with you? Maria's hands tightened around the mug. Since she was born, sir. My sister was supposed to watch her, but she moved to Tampa last year, and childcare is, she stopped. I know it's not standard. I always make sure she stays out of the way, and she never touches anything and… Maria. Yes. Your daughter may have just saved my son's life. The kitchen went very quiet. Maria set her mug down slowly. Dr. Howe identified a cyst this morning, one that had been missed. It's been causing Ethan pressure pain every time he lies on his back. That's why he's been crying.
He paused.
We found it because Rosa pointed at the exact location. At 3 in the morning, in a room full of people with medical degrees. Maria's hand went to her mouth. She does that, she whispered. She's always done that. Since she was tiny. She feels things. She'll walk up to someone and put her hand on whatever's hurting them. My back, my head, before I've even said anything. My mother used to say she stopped herself, like she wasn't sure how that sentence would land in this kitchen, in this house. Had what? Nathaniel asked. A gift. She said it almost apologetically. He nodded slowly. There was a long pause. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, the sky was turning from gray to a pale, uncertain pink. How long have you worked here? He asked. 7 years, sir. Were you here when my wife was alive? Yes. A beat. Mrs. Whitmore was very kind to Rosa. She used to let her sit in the kitchen and color while I worked. She said. Maria stopped again. What did she say? She said a house needs the sound of children in it. The words came out soft and careful, like she wasn't sure she had the right to repeat them. That was before the twins, of course. She used to say she couldn't wait for the house to be loud. Nathaniel looked down at the countertop. She got her wish, he said finally. And there was something in his voice that was half grief, half something else, something that was trying, quietly and painfully, to become gratitude. Maria nodded. Her eyes were bright. I never told you, he said, how much it has meant, the fact that you stayed. These past 7 months. After she died, and the twins came home from the NICU, and everything was, I know it wasn't what you signed up for. I know it's been hard. I was not, he exhaled. I was not easy to work for. You are grieving, Maria said simply. That's generous. It's true. He looked at her for a moment. She held his gaze, steady, no performance in it. Just honesty. The same quality he realized that her daughter had. That absolute, unshowy honesty. I'd like to set up a proper childcare arrangement, he said. For Rosa. So she can be here safely with space, and you're not worrying every minute that she's going to wander somewhere she shouldn't. Mr. Whitmore, that's not. I'm also increasing your salary. Effective immediately. Retroactive to the day my wife died, because I should have done it then. He held up a hand before she could object. And I'm having a room prepared on the east wing. A proper room, not a cot in a hallway. For both of you. Maria pressed her lips together very hard. You don't have to. I know I don't have to, he said. I want to. She nodded. One sharp, quick nod. And then she picked up her tea and looked back out at the pink sky and didn't say anything else because she trusted that sometimes silence is the fullest kind of answer. Nathaniel stayed at the counter for a moment longer. Then, quietly. Where is she now? Rosa? Asleep on the cot. Finally. Good. He stood up. Let her sleep. He walked to the door, then paused. Maria. Yes, sir? Thank you. For raising a child who pays attention. He left before she could see that he was crying again. The 48 hours before Ethan's procedure were the strangest 2 days Nathaniel had experienced in a very long time. Strange because they were quieter, not silent. Amelia was still working through her own discomfort, still fussy and fractious, while the new positioning protocol and the referral to the pediatric orthopedist started to slowly, carefully take effect. But the particular quality of desperation that had lived in the house for 11 days had lifted enough that Nathaniel could hear himself think. He didn't love what he heard when he thought. He sat in his office on the first evening, actually sat at his desk for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, and stared at his phone. 47 unread messages. 11 missed calls from his CFO. 3 from the board. 1 from his lawyer. He read none of them. Instead, he opened his photos. Lydia smiling at the camera on a beach in Portugal, squinting into the sun. Lydia asleep on the sofa with a book face down on her chest and a cold cup of tea on the table. Lydia at the 20-week ultrasound appointment, her face doing that thing it did when she was trying not to cry, jaw tight, eyes too bright, smile winning the battle but only barely. 2 of them, she had whispered in the car after. 2, Nate. How did we get so lucky? He had said something stupid and practical about double the college tuition. She had thrown a parking ticket at him. He missed her so much it was almost physical. A pressure in the center of his chest that never fully went away. Sometimes it faded to a dull background ache, and sometimes, like right now, it surged up into something sharp and real and demanding to be felt. She should be here. She should be here for this, for the diagnosis and the fix and the sleepless nights and the moment when Ethan had slept for almost 3 hours on his right side, and everything had felt, for just a minute, like it might be okay. She should be here. But she wasn't. And Nathaniel had 2 children who needed him to be here, even when he wasn't sure he knew how. He put the phone face down again. On the morning of the procedure, the house was up before dawn. Josephine had laid out the hospital bag. Maria had made coffee and breakfast that nobody ate. Dr. Marsh arrived at 6 a.m. with his team, efficient, calm, the kind of professional stillness that Nathaniel normally found reassuring, but today just made the fear in his stomach more obvious by contrast. "He'll be in and out in under 2 hours," Dr. Marsh said at the door. "The cyst is straightforward. We've done hundreds of these. He'll be sore for a day or 2, but the pressure will be gone immediately." "Immediately," Nathaniel repeated. "Within hours of waking from anesthesia, yes." "And you're certain it's benign?" "The imaging is consistent with a benign splenic cyst. We'll send tissue to pathology as standard, but I would put the chance of anything concerning at less than 1%. Nathaniel looked at his son. Ethan was in his arms, wearing a tiny hospital gown that someone had thought to make blue with small white stars on it, because even hospital gowns for infants apparently came in designs now, and somehow that detail, the small white stars, almost undid him completely. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "You've been so brave. You know that? You have been so brave." Ethan looked up at him. 9 months old, and he had his mother's eyes. That particular shade of brown that shifted depending on the light, sometimes almost gold. He wasn't crying right now. He was just looking. The way babies look at their parents sometimes, like they're reading something written on the inside of your face. "I've got you," Nathaniel told him. "I promise. I've got you." He handed him over to the surgical nurse with the kind of careful deliberateness that takes everything you have. He sat in the hallway, while his son was in the procedure room. Josephine sat with him. Didn't talk much. Just sat. She brought him coffee at one point. He held the cup without drinking it. She didn't comment. At one point Rosa appeared around the corner, still in her pajamas, her bunny tucked under one arm. She looked at Nathaniel with those steady dark eyes. He looked back at her. "He okay?" she asked. "He's going to be okay," Nathaniel said. "Because of you." She considered this for a moment. Then she walked over to where he was sitting, climbed up onto the bench beside him. She had to use both hands and a small hop to get up, settled herself with her bunny, and sat quietly beside him. She didn't say anything.
She just sat there.
Small and warm and completely unaware of the fact that her presence was the only thing making that hallway survivable. They sat together for 40 minutes. When Dr. Marsh appeared in the doorway, mask pulled down, expression relaxed in a way that only means one thing, Nathaniel was on his feet before the door fully opened. "All done," Dr. Marsh said. "Clean removal. He came through beautifully. He's in recovery, he's awake, he's crying?" Nathaniel asked. "Actually," Dr. Marsh almost smiled.
"No, he's not."
He's looking around. Wide awake, alert, looking at the lights. Nathaniel closed his eyes for just 1 second. "Can I see him?" "Right this way." He was halfway down the hall when he remembered. He turned back. Rosa was still on the bench, watching him go with big, quiet eyes. "Thank you, Rosa," he said. She nodded very seriously, the way 3-year-olds do when they've been given a grown-up level of thanks, and they're doing their best to receive it properly. Then she slid off the bench, hit the floor with a soft thump, and trotted off down the hall to find her mother. Nathaniel watched her go. Then he walked toward the sound of his son, not crying, not screaming, Just awake. Just awake, and looking at the lights. Ethan came home the following afternoon. He was quiet in the car in a way that was entirely new, not the exhausted, post-crying quiet of the past 11 days, but something else. Something restful. He fell asleep with his cheek pressed against the side of the car seat, one small fist loosely open on his blanket, and he slept for the entire 40-minute drive. Nathaniel kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. He looked different already.
Softer.
The tension that had been living in his little body, that constant, subtle arching, the way his legs would kick like he was trying to escape something he couldn't name, it was already dissolving.
Kids are like that.
Resilient in ways that break your heart a little. Amelia had had her orthopedist appointment the day prior. The hip dysplasia was mild, caught later than ideal, but not late enough to cause lasting damage. A corrective harness. 8 weeks. Follow-up imaging. Manageable. Nathaniel had said manageable out loud in the car on the way home from that appointment, and then had to pull over for 5 minutes because manageable was the best word he had heard in months. Both of them. Manageable. When they pulled through the gate and the house came into view, Maria was on the front steps with Rosa beside her. Rosa was wearing a yellow dress and holding a handmade card, an absolute mess of crayon and stickers with what appeared to be a drawing of a baby inside a heart. Nathaniel got out of the car and crouched down to her level. "Is that for Ethan?" Rosa nodded and held it out very seriously. He took it like it was the most important document he had ever received. Which, in every way that mattered, it was. "I'm going to frame this," he told her. She looked very pleased with herself. Inside, the house felt different. He had been trying to put his finger on it since the morning of the procedure, and he couldn't quite. And then it hit him as he carried Ethan through the front door. It felt like a house again. Not a hospital. Not a crisis center. Not a monument to money that had failed to solve anything important. A house. Josephine met him in the hallway. "Dr. Howe called," she said. "She wanted me to pass on." A slight pause. A formal apology. In writing, apparently. "Her office is sending a letter." "I don't need an apology from Patricia Howe," Nathaniel said. "She seemed to feel you might."
He thought about it.
"Tell her I'd prefer a protocol review. If there's a gap in how lateral abdominal imaging is interpreted in infants under 12 months, I want it addressed. Not for me. For the next parent sitting in a room full of specialists hearing no signs." Josephine wrote that down. "There's also a reporter from."
No.
"The Wall Street." "Josephine."
No.
She put the notepad away without argument. He took Ethan upstairs, laid him gently in the crib, and stood there watching him breathe the way parents do. The way that probably looks strange to anyone who hasn't done it, just standing there watching your child exist, making sure they're still doing it, this business of being alive. Then he went down the hall. He knocked on the guest room door, the proper guest room, the one on the east wing, where Maria and Rosa had been settled 2 days ago with fresh linens and their own bathroom, and a little sitting area Rosa had immediately colonized with her stuffed animals. "Come in," Maria called. She was folding laundry on the chair. Rosa was on the floor drawing with crayons, tongue slightly out in concentration. He stood in the doorway. "I've been thinking," he said. Maria set a folded shirt down. "About a lot of things. About the past 7 months. About how I've been running this house like a problem to be managed. Like if I hired enough people and bought the right equipment and covered every possible variable." He stopped. "I thought I could control my way through grief. Through being a new parent. Through all of it." Maria was quiet. "I couldn't," he said. "I'm not," he exhaled. "I'm not very good at this. At any of this. The actual human parts."
"You're learning," she said.
"Late. Most people learn late." Rosa looked up briefly from her drawing, assessed the situation as not requiring her input, and went back to her crayons. "Lydia would have known something was wrong on day 1, he said. She had instincts. She would have trusted them even against every specialist in the room. I kept deferring. Because they had the degrees. Because it seemed arrogant not to. Because His voice thinned slightly because grief makes you doubt everything, including yourself. Yes, Maria said. It does. Your daughter doesn't doubt herself. Maria looked at Rosa. Something fond and complicated moved across her face. She hasn't learned to yet, she said. She still just feels what she feels. No filter. How do you keep that? Nathaniel said quietly. When do we lose it? When does life teach us to stop trusting what we feel? Maria considered this seriously. Slowly, she finally said, it happened slowly.
School. Work.
People telling us we're wrong enough times. We learn to ask permission before we trust ourselves. He nodded. I don't want my kids to lose that, he said. That, whatever Rosa has. I want Amelia and Ethan to grow up trusting their own instincts, even against rooms full of experts. Then show them how, Maria said simply. They're watching everything you do. He looked at her for a long moment. I know you have family, he said finally. I know you didn't sign up to basically co-raise 2 infants. If you ever want to. My family is in El Salvador, Maria said. Rosa was born here. This is her home. A pause. And these babies, she nodded in the direction of the nursery, they are not strangers to us. Rosa looked up again. Baby Ethan home? She asked. Baby Ethan is home, Nathaniel confirmed. She smiled, wide, uncomplicated, 3 years old and the world is still basically fine, and went back to her drawing. Nathaniel stayed in the doorway for another moment. Then, good night, Maria. Good night, Mr. Whitmore. He was 2 steps down the hall when he heard Rosa's voice. Night, Mr. Nate.
He stopped.
Mr. Nate. Nobody had called him that and he couldn't remember. Maybe never. He turned back just far enough to see her waving one crayon-smudged hand at him through the gap in the door.
He waved back and smiled.
For the first time in 11 days, he smiled like he meant it. 3 weeks later, the house was loud. Not in the crisis way, not the 11-day nightmare loud, not the monitors and hushed panicked voices loud. Just loud. The normal, chaotic, deeply human kind of loud that Lydia Whitmore had once said was the only sign a house was actually alive. Ethan was healing beautifully. The post-op soreness was gone by day 3, and he had graduated, joyfully, aggressively, into the stage of babyhood where everything in the world needed to be grabbed, mouthed, and then thrown on the floor to see what happened next. He had also discovered that if he made a specific sound, a kind of delighted shriek, Rosa would stop whatever she was doing and come running, which he found wildly entertaining and deployed constantly. Amelia was in her corrective harness and deeply unbothered by it, in the way that very small humans are unbothered by things that would have adults writing op-eds. She had learned, in the past week, to roll herself determinately toward whichever corner of her play mat had the most interesting toy in it, and she pursued this goal with a ferocity that made every adult in the room silently think, yep, that's Nathaniel's daughter, and then try not to laugh. Josephine was still there. She had quietly extended her contract twice without either party making a formal big deal of it. She had also, somewhere in the past month, started treating the twins less like patients and more like people she personally felt responsible for, which Nathaniel found deeply reassuring. Maria cooked on Sunday mornings now. Not because it was her job. Technically, she was the housekeeper, not a cook, but because she had started one Sunday when the kitchen had felt too quiet and everyone had ended up at the big kitchen table eating rice and beans and pernil, and it had been, by a significant margin, the best morning in the house since Lydia died. No one said anything about it.
It just kept happening.
Nathaniel, for his part, was different in ways he couldn't fully articulate and wasn't sure he needed to. He was slower. Not professionally. The company hadn't actually collapsed during his absence, a fact his CFO had delivered with barely concealed surprise. But personally, he moved through the house more slowly. He sat on the floor with the twins more. He asked Maria questions about her life that he had never thought to ask in 7 years and listened to the answers. He had started leaving his phone on the kitchen counter when he came upstairs in the evenings, and some nights he forgot to go back for it. He was also, quietly and without announcing it, making changes. He had funded, fully and anonymously, a review initiative at the Children's Hospital where Dr. Howe worked, focused specifically on closing gaps in infant diagnostic imaging protocols for GI and abdominal assessments. Dr. Howe had called, slightly stunned, to thank him. "I don't want thanks," he'd told her. "I want it to be better for the next family." She had said, with a steadiness he respected, "It will be." He had also established a trust, not in his name, not with fanfare, for pediatric diagnostic research. Modest by his standards, meaningful by anyone else's. He had done these things and told no one. And he had framed Rosa's crayon drawing. It hung in the nursery, right between the woodland mural deer and the painted oak tree, in a simple wood frame, a mess of yellow and orange crayon with a wobbly circle that was apparently a baby and a lopsided heart around it. At the bottom, in Maria's careful handwriting because Rosa had asked her to write it, it read, "Baby be okay. Rosa, age 3. Every night when he checked on the twins before going to bed, he saw it. Every night it reminded him of the same thing, that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the only one telling the truth." On a Thursday evening in late October, Nathaniel was sitting on the nursery floor. Both twins were on the play mat in front of him. Ethan was working very hard on getting a stuffed elephant into his mouth, an ambition he had not yet achieved. Amelia was looking at the ceiling with a thoughtful, slightly judgmental expression she'd had since birth. Rosa appeared in the doorway. "Can I come in?" "Always," Nathaniel said. She patted in, bunny under arm, and sat herself down on the play mat like she owned it. Ethan immediately abandoned the elephant and redirected all ambitions toward Rosa's bunny. "No," Rosa said, pulling it back calmly. "Yours." She replaced it with the elephant. He accepted this. Nathaniel watched them. A 34-year-old billionaire, sitting cross-legged on a play mat in a $6 million house, watching a 3-year-old negotiate toy boundaries with his 9-month-old son. He thought about the man he'd been a month ago. He thought about the calls he hadn't taken and the deals he hadn't made, and the board members who had started speaking about him in careful, worried tones that his assistant had reported back to him. He thought about how his entire world had been, for so long, measured in transactions and outcomes and controlled variables. He thought about a 3-year-old girl who had walked into a room at 3 in the morning and simply felt the truth. "Rosa," he said. She looked up. "What made you come in that night? When Ethan was crying? What made you walk down the hallway?" She thought about it with genuine seriousness.
"He was sad," she said.
Everyone was trying to help him. "They were busy," she said. "When people are busy, they don't hear the sad." He looked at her for a long moment. "When people are busy, they don't hear the sad." 3 years old. He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "You're exactly right." She nodded back, satisfied, and returned her attention to Ethan, who had made a second attempt on the bunny. "No," she said again gently. Outside the nursery window, the October light was going golden and low, the kind of light that makes everything look a little like a memory, even while it's happening. The sound machine was off. Nobody had turned it on tonight because nobody needed it. The woodland mural glowed softly in the evening light. The little framed drawing hung between the deer and the oak tree. "Baby be okay." Nathaniel looked at his children. Ethan, who had finally accepted the elephant and was now gumming it with great commitment. Amelia, who had rolled herself 3 inches toward the more interesting toy and looked deeply satisfied about it. Both of them here. Both of them okay. He had not saved them. A 3-year-old girl with a stuffed bunny and bare feet and no medical training had walked into a room full of the most expensive expertise money could buy. And she had simply paid attention. She had listened. She had not been busy. Nathaniel Whitmore, 34 years old, for $0.2 billion in assets, 2 companies, 3 board seats, made himself a quiet and private promise on that Thursday evening in October, sitting on a play mat surrounded by the people who had, without trying to, rebuilt something in him he hadn't known was broken. He would not be too busy to hear the sad. Not anymore. Not ever again. Outside the room, down the hall, Maria smiled at nothing in particular and turned back to her work. She had heard the quiet, and she knew what it meant. It meant the house was finally, truly home.